operators that we called Lady Di. And she looked at me and said, well, you and Martin are twins, aren't you? And I said, well, we are twins. We have different mothers, and I'm much better looking. So, and she agreed with that. All right. So I'm going to just give a little bit, this will be very brief, a little bit of the origins of the idea of the exposome. I think Rosie did a good job of kind of highlighting some of it. But it all started with this paper that was, it was actually an editorial published by Chris Wilde, 2005. And I didn't see this paper until Martin brought it to my attention at the end of 2008. And in this paper, Chris said, well, you know, we've been dealing with all this genomic stuff, but it doesn't really seem to have that much utility when we're studying chronic diseases. And so what we need, if we're really going to get at the source of what causes these diseases, is an exposome, you know, which is the analog to the genome that covers all of the things that we're exposed to during life. And when I read this, it was just, I've said it before, it's like somebody shot a diamond into my brain, and all of these ideas I'd had about exposure over the years started to crystallize around this exposome idea. And it just so happens that I had been appointed to this committee of the National Academy of Sciences that was looking at emerging technologies and their influence on environmental health. So I went to my first meeting, and they were fishing around for ideas for workshops that would be put on by the National Academy to highlight some of these emerging technologies. And I suggest, well, why don't we have one on the exposome? And people looked at me like I was crazy. I mean, what in the world are you talking about? I said, exposome, it's the idea of all of the exposures during life, no matter where they originate, and let's get at the sources of these things. So we did put on this workshop. It was in February of 2010, and it was really well attended. I mean, most of the people in exposure science were there, and people in epidemiology. Chris Wilde gave the keynote. I was the main organizer, I think, for this event, and it was very stimulating. People thought it was terrific. And after I got back, I talked to Martin, and I said, you should really publish, and that gets to the heart of what this meeting emphasized. And so I wrote up a draft and talked to people at Science, and they said, well, it sounds like kind of an odd idea, but if you'll send us, you know, I think 1,000 words, we'll take a look at it and let you know if we think it would be worth doing. We sent it in, some editing. Martin and I went back and forth with it, and finally they accepted it for publication. And this was it. Rosie mentioned it, and then it had this figure that she showed. And that's sort of the heart of the idea, is that we have all of these exposures. Some of them originate outside the body. Those are the ones that are typically highlighted in environmental health, pollutants, radiation, things of that nature. But there are also many things that originate inside the body, from normal metabolic processes and from pathological processes that occur from time to time, including all of the bugs we've got in our gut, which are producing thousands and thousands of chemicals, which are actually entering the body. So these are exposures that we receive all the time, and many of those exposures are probably what are really causing disease. And the idea is that if we focus inside the body, we can get information about both of these things that are coming in from outside, things that are originating inside, and all of the different biological pathologies that arise from those. So that was the idea. And this paper was published in 2010. And when it came out, the people at the National Academy said, this is really starting to generate some interest. So let's have a second workshop and talk about technologies that might be used to measure the exposome. And so they put on another workshop in December of 2011, and that really got things going. Now, One of the people who was there was Linda Birnbaum, who was the head of NIHS at the time. And she was really very struck with this whole idea and how far it appeared to be going and what kind of possibilities it had. So in 2012, the beginning of 2012, when they came up with a strategic plan for NIHS, she said, or she had them add as one of the goals, define and disseminate the concept of the exposome and create the tools and technologies and the research capacity needed to characterize the exposome. And this was a major, major advance. And so Rosie showed her version of this same trend towards publication. So these are just publications that had the term exposome in the title, starting in 2005 when Chris published his paper, and nothing really changed until this first National Academy workshop, which was in 2010, and then our Rappaport and Smith paper in Science, which came toward the end of 2010, then the second Academy workshop, which was in 2011, and then the NIHS strategic plan, which included the exposome explicitly. And you can see this was really the beginning of what has transpired since. So I like to think that Chris Wild, he conceived the exposome, but I think Martin and I gestated it. And it was that gestation and the confluence of serendipity where I got on this National Academy committee and things sort of arose from there. But once it got going, it really got going. And now there are many thousands of papers that use the word exposome somewhere as a keyword. And there's 400 or almost 800 papers that have used the word exposome in the title, suggesting that they're dealing more with the concept and where it's all going. Now, just to finish things off, this is the National Academy of Science auditorium where Martin and I gave our talks in the first conference, and I gave talks in the second conference. And you can see it's quite a nice room. Now, I was at Berkeley for some years, and then for reasons that I won't go into now, I went from Berkeley to the University of North Carolina in 1990. Now, I was involved with the Berkeley Superfund program, and I still had 2 years, I think, on my project when I left to go to North Carolina, and Martin kindly allowed me to continue to work on it from North Carolina. And we ultimately got our own Superfund program at North Carolina when I was there and continued on the work there. But the first year I was there, and it was in the winter time, and Martin called me up one day and he said, look, I'm supposed to go to Washington, D.C., where they're going to have a meeting of all of the Superfund program directors, and I can't go. So could you go for me and just give the progress report for our program? And I said, well, yeah, okay. He said, but I don't know anything about what's been going on. He said, nah, don't worry about it. I'll send you the slides, and all you have to do, as you can do many times before, or if you've done many times before, just walk the audience through from the slides. And I said, well, okay. These were real slides. This was before PowerPoint. So I got the slides on the afternoon before I was supposed to go first thing the next morning. So I had a quick look through them, and then I got my briefcase, got on the plane, went up to Washington, D.C., and they had a meeting in one of the auditoriums at the National Academy of Sciences. I'm not sure it was this one, because I had never been in here before, but it was something that looked like this room. So it was a big podium and lots of lights around. And so, as fate would have it, Berkeley was, maybe because Berkeley has a B, it was the first one of the presentations. So I gave them the slides, and I went up there, standing on the podium, and they couldn't turn the lights off. And you could not see a slide. You couldn't see anything. You look up at the screen and all you'd see was white. And the guy who was chairing this thing said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just, you know what it's all about. Just sort of walk us through." And I said, I don't think that's going to work. So they said, well, we'll just take a break and see if we can get the lights out. So about 20 minutes later, this custodian comes in with a 20-foot ladder and a ball peen hammer. I'm not kidding. Takes the ladder, gets up, climbs up, finds one of the lights that's offending, hits it with the hammer, cracks it, and it goes out. He does this 3 times, and we're all sitting there. And then I came and I did the presentation, such as it was. It was very embarrassing, one of the most embarrassing times of my life. So this is one of the fixes that Martin got me into, and I'm not going to talk to you about any of the other ones, but thanks for listening.
Well, thank you all for great comments, and thank you, Steve. I'm not sure about the better looking thing, but you know, I'll get over it. So it's time for lunch, and we're a bit behind. But there's plenty of food out there, and feel free to have 1 or more sandwiches. And we'll start again at 1 o'clock, but we might be a few minutes late. But looking forward to seeing you all in the break. And thanks everybody for joining us from Hopkins and elsewhere all over Colorado, etc. It was really great and very touching. Thank you. So let's